Welcome to the Idaho REALTORS Podcast, our association's podcast for membership, education, and outreach. I'm the IR Communications Director, Nick Stout, and I will be your host for this week. On today's episode, I meet with the Idaho REALTORS Legal Counsel, Jason Risch. In our meeting, Jason and I discuss some timely property tax issues that have come up recently in Idaho communities. We will also have some information about upcoming IR elections
and the SafeShowings App, a free benefit to all IR members.
Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to visit our website, idahorealtors.com, for more information. Also, if you haven't done so, remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
All right, welcome to Idaho REALTORS Podcast. I'm your host this week, Nick Stout. I am the Idaho REALTORS Communications Director, and once again, I am joined by our good friend and Idaho REALTORS Legal Counsel, Jason Risch.
Happy to be here.
Jason,
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So we have a little bit of an update this week, just kind of a little legal issue we thought that the members might be interested in. They might have heard in the last few weeks a little bit of news of property tax, issues coming up. So I just kind of wanted to sit down and talk to you today and kind of see if you can kind of give us a little overview of that issue and, share any information that you think is important for our members to know.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And it is getting some new, property tax assessments in Idaho are getting a lot of news. We've had a very active year in assessments, and values have been going up. That has gotten a lot of attention. But this one in particular deals with the homeowners exemption and how that affects our property values. That's the subject matter of the lawsuit coming out of Latah County, is the homeowners exemptions.
Well, why don't we just kind of start from the top and see what we can do here. So can you just kind of give us some background of what's going on in Latah County for anyone who might not be in the know about it?
Sure. So in order to start the conversation, you have to understand what a homeowner's exemption is. And the homeowner's exemption is an exemption that a property owner is allowed to take on land that is their homestead. It's where they live. It's your primary residence, and it allows you to take a certain amount of the value, we'll say $125,000 off of the assessed value. So if your home is worth, $150,000, you're going to be able to say, look, $125,000 of it is not taxable, and so then the property tax is reduced. The theory is that off of the value of your house, then your property taxes are based on the levy and all of that, and so it has an end effect of reducing the amount of taxes a homeowner has to pay versus, say, a home renter that wouldn't necessarily own the property.
It sounds like there's maybe a little bit of legislation that's come up the last couple of years related to all this. Can you give us a little bit of background of what's been happening there?
Yes, and that actually leads us right into that lawsuit. But the homeowner's exemption, as we just described it, as anybody who's a realtor listening to this podcast would hopefully be nodding their head and say, that's great for homeowners. We like homeowners. We want, we believe that a huge value of America is to have individuals all owning their own home, and that it's a great benefit when we can provide less government taxation to those homes. That's always a great benefit. And so as a result, the homeowner exemption is something that is tracked very closely by the Idaho Realtors. In the 2020 legislative session, something came to fruition that had been worked on for decades, and that was the elimination of the deadline for the homeowner's exemption application. For years, if you were to acquire property, any property property that you're going to live in that's going to be your homestead, and you want to apply for that exemption, you had to make that application no later than April 15th of a calendar year. So the question is, well, what if I bought my home on April 16th? Well, you didn't have the ability to make that application if you had purchased your home after that April 15th deadline. And there's some complexities that I'll try to avoid going into here, but I'm just speaking generally here. So that if you had a purchase of a home in the latter part of the year, you lost that homeowner's exemption because you didn't meet that April 15th deadline.
Right.
That April 15th deadline has been historical, been around for a long time. There were reasons for it when it first started out. Over time, that deadline became more and more arbitrary. The realtors watched that for a long time. They started having conversations with the county assessors saying, look, this isn't right that somebody, just because they didn't get an April 15th deadline, say they bought their house in June or even July, to make it even July 1, right? First half, second half of the year. Just because they bought in the second half of the year, they're being penalized and they can't get that homeowner's exemption in place. And it really was just arbitrary. So that was a conversation that was happening for a long time to try to get that removed, which ultimately led to legislation in 2020. The realtors drafted legislation that pulled out that April 15 deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's, how does that get to our lawsuit? The way that worked is that it went in and it struck some sentences out of the statute, and prior to removing that April 15 deadline, which, by the way, we got the bill passed. Everybody appreciated what it did for homeowners, and the legislature was excited about providing that relief. And there was some conversation that happened at the time, but this idea of proration came up. And proration is, okay, well, yes, we're going to let you apply for your homeowner's exemption at any time during the year. There's no longer an application deadline per se, but are we able to prorate that homeowner's exemption for you? So in other words, to use my previously mentioned $125,000 exemption, well, if you bought your house in July, then we're going to prorate that. So you only get to take maybe $75,000 off of your taxes or off of your value for tax purposes. So that again, I don't want to go too far down in the weeds, but that's the concept of proration, and that's what led to the rub.
Idaho REALTORS elections are right around the corner. IR is seeking qualified candidates for 2022 positions, including First Vice President, East District Vice President, North District Vice President, and NAR directors for small-size boards and mid-size boards. Monday, July 18th is going to be an important application deadline for prospective candidates. Applications from candidates and official nominations from local associations for individuals seeking office must be received by IR no later than 5 p.m. If you or someone you know is interested in running for a position, please visit idahorealtors.com/2022-elections to learn more. Again, that's idahorealtors.com/2022-elections.
Did you know that the SafeShowings app is free to all IR members? This year, Idaho Realtors has partnered with SafeShowings to bring the SafeShowings Enterprise app, a $50 a year privacy tool, free to all members. With the SafeShowings app, you can discreetly notify emergency contacts, track your showings, and even log pictures of potential buyers, all in an effort to keep you safe. IR cares about the safety of our members, and we are excited to offer this benefit to all Idaho Realtors. Visit idahorealtors.com/SafeShowings for more information.
So the proration conversation came up in that a lot of counties, after the April 15 deadline was removed, they were forced to deal with a year-long application process. And that's when the idea of prorations really started getting some traction and saying, well, all right, that's fine. We can take your application all year, but just because you applied on December 15th doesn't mean you get an entire year's worth of exemption. And so we're going to, carve that up maybe in 12ths, or I know some people talked about doing it biweekly. So we're looking at 52.
Oh, geez.
Right. So there was a lot of math that was getting complicated in there. And we ultimately had, it started out from Kootenai County. We got word that Kootenai County was looking into doing this, and that maybe I think there was a staffer that was in the Kootenai County Assessor's Office that had mentioned that, and of course it got a lot of people's attention, and so we had a conversation with the Kootenai County Assessor, and ultimately the Kootenai County put out a written position that said, no, we're not prorating, we're not going to go down that road. We don't think the law allows for proration. It is important. I'm going to pause right here to say that, when we changed the law, we didn't take proration in, we didn't take proration out, we didn't do anything with proration at all. We just removed that April 15 deadline for the application. But there was some language that was added that said that application is effective upon the application date. Mm-hmm. So I think some people see proration written within those words. But anyway, so that was Kootenai County. And Kootenai County quickly resolved the situation. A couple of other counties kind of perked up at the idea, but then nothing came of it. But there were enough of them out there that the Idaho State Tax Commission, which sort of oversees the county assessors, if you will, it's a state agency, it issued an opinion that said, we have reviewed the statute and prorations is not in the statute and you are not to prorate. And it issued this advisory to all the counties in the state of Idaho. And that happened in the year 2020 when the bill passed. Then after that, it kept kind of had some legs, and so the Attorney General got involved, and the Attorney General wrote an opinion in March of 2021, I believe it was, and the Attorney General did the same thing. They reviewed the statute and said, we don't see proration in there either. You cannot prorate. Mm-hmm. So you have these two guidances out there, and all the counties said, okay, well, we will follow that guidance. We'll get that done, with the exception of two, and that's Latah County and that's Lincoln County. But anyway, so those two counties have said, no, we are going to prorate, and we disagree with the opinions that are out there. We think the ability to prorate is in there legally. So the state tax commission, so they told the state tax commission, we're going to prorate. The state tax commission said, no, you're not. And that's ultimately where the lawsuit came. It is the state tax commission versus these two counties in a legal battle over whether or not proration is allowed under that statute.
Well, as IR's legal counsel, could you give us a little bit of context for why this issue should be important to members and kind of what's going on here?
Sure, absolutely, and it's important because when you hear about it in the media, you may hear, oh, homeowners exemption, that is a huge issue for Idaho realtors, and it is, and that's the reason we got involved in. And it's actually our bill that sort of started this conversation. While we weren't all about proration, we were just about getting rid of that date. The proration sort of came out of it. And so a lot of people have approached and said, well, that's our bill that they're litigating. We need to be involved. At this point in time, really what this lawsuit's shaping up to be is, does the tax commission have the authority to make a rule that the counties have to follow? So while it is tangentially related to our bill, at this point in time, we have not gotten involved in the lawsuit, which the realtors will do. We will file amicus briefs when we think it's important. That's a fancy legal term for just getting in sort of as a third party to a lawsuit. And we will become parties to lawsuit when it is that important. At this point in time, we're monitoring the lawsuit because it can have some effect. We want to make sure that it doesn't undo a lot of work that the realtors did to get that April 15th deadline removed. But the reason it's important is that this is your member dollars at work, right? This is a great example of that. The member dollars go to pay for our legislative affairs folks, for Max Pond, or government relations, who got the bill passed. We were involved as legal counsel, helping draft the legislation of the bill and also helping interpret it. The legislative committee has heard this topic over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that the realtors are on the forefront of. We're definitely watching it. But as far as getting involved in the lawsuit at this point in time, we don't believe it's quite risen to that occasion yet. So, staying involved. This is, you always want to be involved. Like I said, your members' dues at work. It's also squarely lands in the world of RPAC. When you make your donations to RPAC, that's what made this legislation possible. Obviously, when we're making donations to our Idaho representatives, the Idaho representatives in the legislature learn who we are. They learn about our issues. They get educated in our issues because we never give them a check without giving them a speech. So we give them a speech on what our issues are and what's important to us. So that was really instrumental in getting that April 15th date removed, which I think everybody who's listening to this will agree was a good thing. As far as watching for in the future. This is in the court system, so it won't move forward in a matter of weeks. It'll be a matter of months, if not years. It'll play itself out, and a lot of times you're going to hear that this litigation involves a homeowners exemption. I don't know that I agree with that summary at this point. It really involves a proration of homeowners exemption, and depending on where you fall on the scale of things, you may be the type of person who thinks, hey, just because somebody buys a home in December, they shouldn't get this year's worth of exemption. There may be other people on the other end of the spectrum that say, yeah, you know what, that's what the law says, and that's what you get. We all need all the help we can get in tax relief, so take it if you can get it. So it's going to move forward, and we'll see some decisions from the court at some point in time, or if the parties can get together and work something out, then maybe they'll come up with a compromise. But otherwise, you'll probably be hearing some headlines once it reaches its final destination in some sort of court opinion. Shy of that, it probably won't get too many more headlines.
Well, we look forward to seeing what happens here, and if there's ever a need for an update on this issue, I'm hoping we'll get a chance to have you back and talk again. But nothing else. Thank you so much for talking to us this week, and we appreciate you coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Idaho Realtors Podcast, our association's podcast for membership, education, and outreach. Thank you to Jason Risch for joining us this episode. If you ever have any legal questions for Idaho Realtors, make sure to call the legal hotline at 800-324-3559. Again, that's 800-324-3559. My name is Nick Stout, and I'm the IR Communications Director, and I was your host for this week's episode. Remember to visit our website and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following us on your preferred podcast platform, liking on social media, and sharing it with your friends and followers. Thank you again for joining us for this week's episode, and take care until next time.